This week on Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut, scams targeted towards diverse populations.
Some people are very nice to you. They speak your language. Still, don't let your guard down.
How criminals are targeting people in the Asian American community and beyond.
Plus, billions, that's billions with a B, of dollars are lost to consumer fraud crimes each year. But victims of these crimes frequently don't experience sympathy from others. We tell you what to say to stamp out shame and rewrite that narrative around fraud. It's not your fault.
Then, fear, taxes, and possible jail time.
He gave his officer number and he gave and he made me write it down.
We take a look at the scare tactics these criminals are using.
Welcome to Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut. We have a really great show for you today. Bienvenidos a Combatiendo Fraude con AARP en Connecticut. Hoy le tenemos una gran presentación. But first, I'd love to hear from you. Is there a certain scam you'd like us to spread awareness about? Comment below and we'll consider it for a future show. Today, we're talking about scams and diversity. But what exactly does that include? Heather, an assistant U.S. attorney, is here to explain. Tell us all about it, Heather.
I've referred to them as affinity scams. And most of the stuff that I work with that's affinity scam related is usually has to do with some kind of financial fraud. So what happens is whatever the sort of affinity is, right? Is it your church group or is it a local community center for maybe a specific racial community or cultural community? Someone is often a part of that community, right? So they may be part of that church or they may be part of that culture and they infiltrate that particular church or that particular community center and they sell some sort of investment opportunity usually. And the scam is very similar to other investment and financial fraud scams, except for the fact that they have this ability often to sort of worm their way in because they are of the same genre, whatever. They're the same religion, they're the same culture. And so there's a trust there that may not be there otherwise if the person was an outsider. And so they're able to really build upon that shared sense of community to get people to trust them.
Thanks, Heather. And you know what? I've been a victim too by people that, because I speak Spanish, think that they're going to become my buddies by speaking in my language, and yet they're trying to scam me. No, you're not my friend. You're not my buddy just because we speak the same language. And so Heather's going to be back in a bit to talk about red flags to look for when it comes to these kinds of scams. So stick around for those tips. Next up, we take a look at how scammers use fear tactics to target one family.
I got a call and it was my mother-in-law on the phone, and she was quite, sort of anxious and very shocked. And she said, the first thing she asked me is, she asked about my husband. Is he okay? And I said, yeah, he's at work. And then she told me that somebody had called her from the IRS and they needed $2,000. And if she didn't come up with the money, they would go to his office and arrest him. Right. And they gave details like, okay, this is, and I remember the name even. This is Officer Chandler, she said, right? Officer Chandler wants, and he's going to come and he's going to go to, my husband's office and arrest him because he missed out some payment on his taxes. And she was really, really worried. And I said, so what does he want? He said, well, she wants me to, he wants me to find the money, and she was willing to call all her relatives and get this $2,000 to save her son from being arrested. But I actually called our accountant and I said, "Are we okay?" Because because she was so he gave his officer number and he gave and he made me write it down, and he did all this stuff. And the accountant actually said, this is a scam. If you're getting anything from the IRS, it'll be in writing. People will never call. People will never ask for money straight away. Don't panic. And so I called my mother-in-law, and she was like, she was really very, very stressed about it. She was almost in tears. So I want everybody to know that these kinds of things happen to many, many people. It happened to my family. And if it happens to your family, please report it. Please make sure that your family is okay, of course, but please, report it, because it's so important to deal with these people who are so evil, actually. So please do report it.
Of course, people would be scared with these tactics. Taxes are confusing. And this isn't the only paperwork-heavy process featured in fraud. Alan is going to give us an example of how criminals are targeting immigrants who are so desperate to see their families.
What he did is he pretended to be an immigration officer. And he even, not only did he speak Vietnamese, and he told people that he works for the immigration office. Not only did he say that, he got business card made out that says he's an immigration officer. And then he can do anything related to immigration. So, like as minorities, we have a lot of things to do with the immigration office. For example, petitioning for our loved one to come, or want to be naturalized as a US citizen. And so most people who pay him cash, and people were saying, like, he was telling people, you petition for your loved one to come from Vietnam to America, the line is very long. You have to wait 3, 4, 5, 6 years. But if I help you, they'll come in no time. Or someone who have a DUI, a slight criminal record, they are afraid they cannot become a US citizen. He said, no problem, I can fix it. So he'll collect a lot of money from these victims. When he was arrested, there was more than $100,000 cash found in his car. When something bad happened, besides telling your bank, you need to report to the police. And if you don't speak very good English, or you speak English like me with accent, let me teach you one thing that will be very helpful. You call 911. If you speak Vietnamese, they will say 911 police and fire. What is your name? Then you just say Vietnamese. What happened? Vietnamese. Where do you live? Vietnamese. Now, in the quickest time, you tell the person you speak only Vietnamese. And the 911 dispatchers, they have the obligation to find you an interpreter to help you. If you say, what is your name? Chinese. What happened? Chinese. Where do you live? Chinese. They have to find you a Chinese interpreter. The average time to get an interpreter online is about 1 minute, sometimes 2 minutes. But most of the time, 1 minute, they'll get one, because they have the language line too. And once you get the people who speak your language, you can speak very clearly what happened, and you don't have to worry about your accent or not being able to express yourself.
With immigration, cultural, or even religious scams, really any scam involving diversity, there are a few things you can do to stay safe. Heather, what are some of those red flags we should look for?
When somebody new enters your community who makes it a point to focus on all the similarities, but also has some sort of investment scam or investment scheme, let's start off. They're not actually pushing it, obviously, as a scam, but some investment scheme, you should be wary, right? Like, they're brand new to your community. There may be some similar attributes, but they're trying to sell you something, right? You should think about, who is this person? Where do they come from? Don't necessarily trust them just because they're now members of your community. And then I think it's going to be like any other scam with respect to other red flags. So if they need to know the answer, like right away, right? you got to invest $100,000 and X, Y, and Z are going to happen. But if you don't invest it like now, this is not going to be available tomorrow. So not giving you time to think about and make a educated decision about the investment opportunity is a huge red flag. And I think the third red flag would be you can't tell anyone. Don't share this with anyone. It's between me and the church, or me and the community, or me and you. If you can't share it broadly, if you can't discuss the opportunity broadly with other people, then I think twice about doing it. Because why is it such a secret?
Great information. Thanks so much, Heather. You know, it's interesting how a lot of red flags can be applied to any scam, not just the ones we're mentioning today. Now, we're going to hear another very personal story. Alan is back to tell us how some criminals are using cultural beliefs to steal thousands.
The blessing scam is very much like Chinese ripping off Chinese. When they scam a victim, they scam their lifelong savings, and which is tens and thousands of dollars in their lifelong jewelry. Then they will be walking, talking. How many kids do you have? Are you from the Shanghai area? Oh, it so happens she's from Shanghai too, and she speaks Shanghainese too. And then they will be speaking the same dialect. How many kids do you have? Who treat you the best? Oh, your younger son. Then they got some big background information of you. Then now they walk maybe 2-3 blocks. They come to a quiet corner, quiet area. Then the third scammers come out. And then they said, oh, you're looking for the Chinese herbalist? That is my grandfather. But my grandfather also said, your younger son is doomed to die before 12 midnight tonight. The spirits, the ghost, is going after your younger son. And because the ghost died a tragic death, she's trying to find some victims to resurrect her, so she would have a better life next year. Now, they are making use of the superstitious thoughts, superstitious belief of these Chinese women. And Chinese women, they all have listened to ghost stories, and they know that, and when someone die a tragic death, the spirit will be floating around and grabbing some victims. So they said, okay, please, how do I save my younger son? He's the best, he's the kindest to me, and how do I save him? My grandfather said, now, they should give her a bag. Take this bag home, put all your jewelry, all your savings in this bag, and bring it back. My grandfather will give you the blessing. And then they will also say, this is heavenly secret. Do not leak any heavenly secret. These poor victims, when they bring the black bag, they put their lifelong jewelries, everything into this bag. And they are thinking that the Chinese herbalist will give the blessing, and they'll get their jewelry back. They'll get their lifelong savings back. But they are long gone by the time they open it up. The best thing to do is to report to the police as quickly as possible. Is stop these bad guys from doing the same thing over and over again to our own people.
Wow, just wow. Imagine thinking you're protecting a loved one only to have your valuables stolen. It makes me so frustrated, mad, furious, and even more to see that happening to good, honest people. You know, one thing to be aware of is that self-blame is very prevalent when someone is involved in any type of scam. It can result in shame, depression, and even suicide. Please remember, there is no reason to be ashamed. These are professional criminals who are preying on people with complicated tactics and psychological training. If someone you know has experienced fraud and needs emotional support, I highly recommend checking out AARP's REST program. These are small, peer-led support groups. Discussions are all confidential, and you can join by phone, tablet, or computer. Now, if you know someone who's been targeted, what should you say? Here's a quick guide.
AARP is working to try to help us all change the narrative and the language that we use. So I'm going to give some examples now of what not to say and how we can say things better when we're talking about fraud victims. Instead of saying, "Why are you talking to these people?" you can say, "What information did they ask you?" or "Why did they call you?" Instead of saying, "I can't believe you fell for it," you can say, "This is not your fault." Instead of saying, "Scammers are clever," we can say, "Criminals are deceitful." Instead of saying, "You were duped or swindled," we can say that you were deceived or coerced or manipulated. Instead of saying that someone fell for a scam, we want to try to say that they were victimized by a scam. And instead of saying, "Get smarter about scams," we like to say, "Learn the red flags of scams."
You know, I just love these practical ways to support others. Please remember, you are part of the change when it comes to the narrative surrounding fraud. Imagine living in a world where victims of these crimes feel supported. Law enforcement investigates their cases. Prosecutors send criminals to prison. And lawmakers seek to put an end to the multi-billion-dollar fraud industry. That is one of the goals with this show. Remember, if you've heard of a scam in your area, or if you've been targeted, call the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. Together, we can catch these cons and flip the narrative when it comes to shame surrounding being a victim. Don't forget, there is help out there. No matter your age, race, religion, or cultural background, you are not alone. Thank you so much for joining us today on Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut. Please make sure to like and subscribe and check back again for new episodes.
Join us for events in your community. Go to aarp.org/CT events. Look for the Con Artist Playbook by AARP Connecticut.